Look, the global shipping industry is absolutely the lifeblood of modern trade. But let's be honest, it's also a massive source of emissions, relying heavily on deeply polluting fossil fuels just to keep our supply chains moving. Welcome to this explainer on how India is completely transforming its massive maritime ports into global hubs for green hydrogen and ammonia. It is this incredibly fast unfolding story of infrastructure, economics, and international cooperation that is fundamentally reshaping how the entire world thinks about zero-emission shipping. Let's get right into it. Okay, we're going to dive right in with a frankly staggering number, a planned 2,000 crore rupee investment by AM Green to develop a green ammonia bunkering hub down at VOC port in Tuticorin. Now, if you're wondering, a bunkering hub is essentially a massive, specialized maritime gas station. And this investment, it's designed to establish up to 200 kilotons per annum of capacity by the end of this decade. This isn't just some conceptual idea sitting on a whiteboard. Land has already been acquired. The sheer scale of this financial commitment shows us that major corporate players are totally ready to place massive bets on India's green energy future. And what's really crucial here is that this steel-in-the-ground action is supported at the absolute highest levels by the Ministry of Ports, Shipping, and Waterways. It's one thing for private companies to throw money at a project, but it is a whole different ballgame when the government steps in to provide the institutional support to actually make it happen. Why does that matter so much? Because it cuts through the regulatory red tape, it fast-tracks land acquisition, and it signals absolute safety to international investors. This kind of public-private synergy is exactly what takes a risky, isolated project and turns it into a rock-solid cornerstone of a national supply chain. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll cover 1. India's green port revolution. 2. The national hydrogen hubs. 3. The scale and cost problem. 4. Global green shipping corridors. 5. The India-EU trade bridge. And finally, 6. Delivering a zero-carbon future.
Section 1, India's Green Port Revolution, starting at the micro level.
Right, so these local port investments definitely don't happen in a vacuum. They are driven directly by India's National Panchamrit Climate Strategy, which was first introduced at COP26. Just look at these aggressive milestones. We are talking about reaching 500 gigawatts of non-fossil capacity. To put that in perspective, that's enough to power millions and millions of homes entirely on clean energy, and fulfilling 50% of the country's energy requirements via renewables by 2030. The big takeaway here is that this entire strategy builds up to a massive, economy-wide net zero target by 2070. The ports are really just acting as the vanguard for this much larger national transformation. This transition is an officially supported mandate for a self-reliant, carbon-neutral maritime ecosystem under the Maritime Amrit Kal Vision 2047. In plain English, this is basically India's master plan to ensure that as their economy completely explodes over the next couple of decades, their carbon footprint doesn't explode right along with it. It ensures economic progress seamlessly aligns with environmental responsibility, and it's setting new global benchmarks for how a country can industrialize without carbonizing. And if you want to talk about the sheer speed of this transition, get this. A brand new 1-megawatt green hydrogen plant was just commissioned at the Deendayal Port Authority in Kandla in an astonishing 4 months. Actually, scratch that. 4 months is practically overnight in the infrastructure world. Built entirely by Indian engineers, this plant is already capable of producing 140 metric tons of green hydrogen annually. I mean, this is what speed, scale, and skill actually look like when policy meets aggressive execution. Section 2, the National Hydrogen Hubs, scaling up. We've got 3 major ports officially recognized by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy to serve as focal points for large-scale hydrogen production. There's Deendayal in Gujarat on the western coast, VOC in Tamil Nadu, and Paradip in Odisha on the eastern coast. Notice that geography for a second. These hubs strategically cover India's massive coastlines. By designating these specific areas as green hydrogen hubs, the government is creating a cluster-based development model. Simply put, by grouping everything together in these 3 specific zones, they share critical infrastructure, heavily slash logistical costs, and most importantly, achieve the massive economies of scale you absolutely need for global export. Section 3, the scale and cost problem, the financial reality. But hey, we've got to face facts. Going green is expensive. Really expensive. Let's look at the total cost of ownership, or TCO, which is buying, running, and maintaining a ship. For a vessel operating on green methanol, it's estimated at $184 million over its lifetime. Compare that to just $102 million for a conventional vessel running on VLSFO,
which is the standard, heavily polluting fossil fuel most ships burn today. That is a massive, nearly 80% premium just to go green. What you should really take away from this is a harsh economic truth. Domestic coastal routes alone simply do not have the cargo volume to justify these ballooning costs. They're great for learning the ropes, sure, but they totally lack the scale needed to drive these sky-high prices back down to earth.
Section 4, Global Green Shipping Corridors, the macro solution. So, to solve that massive cost hurdle, we have to zoom out to the global level. By linking India to major global hubs, we create the multi-million-ton demand necessary to finally make these alternative fuels economically viable. The proposed Rotterdam-India-Singapore corridor, it's a complete game-changer. It links India directly to two of the most critical, high-traffic maritime gateways in Europe and Asia. By aggregating demand across this massive corridor, we can unlock over 1 million tons of e-fuel demand per year by 2030. And just to clarify, an e-fuel is basically a synthetic fuel created using renewable energy. This corridor literally transforms Indian ports from local operations into strategic nodes on one of the busiest east-west trade routes on the entire planet. Section 5. The India-EU Trade Bridge, a perfect match. Now this brings us to a perfect geopolitical matchmaking scenario. The core realization here is that to save the planet, Europe's massive industrial demand must securely anchor India's cheap renewable supply. Europe needs clean industrial feedstocks to keep its industries competitive while decarbonizing, and frankly, they desperately want to diversify away from geopolitically concentrated fossil fuel supply chains. India, on the other hand, needs mature, reliable buyers to scale up its production and drive down costs. I mean, they fit together like puzzle pieces, right? And India is absolutely delivering on its end of the bargain. Thanks to incredibly cheap and abundant renewable energy, we're talking vast amounts of sunshine and wind paired with lower operational costs. India has the capacity to export millions of tons of competitively priced green ammonia right now to European markets. Recent price discoveries in India have landed in the $570 to $650 per ton range. This structural economic advantage puts them materially below European procurement benchmarks. India isn't just an aspirational producer anymore. It is rapidly becoming a global price setter in the green energy market. So how do we make sure this actually works? Let's break down the 3 essential pillars that guarantee these international trade corridors function for both private investors and public governments. First up, we need shared port-to-port logistics, meaning standardized bunkering practices and safety frameworks so ships can actually load the fuel safely anywhere in the world. Second, certification alignment. It is absolutely vital that a molecule classified as green in India is legally recognized as green under strict EU regulations. And third, long-term offtake mechanisms. Private companies are not going to invest billions without guaranteed buyers. Offtake mechanisms are basically legally binding long-term purchase contracts that remove that risk entirely. Section 6. Delivering a zero-carbon future. Closing the gap. Let's tie the whole shebang together. Remember that terrifying 80% cost premium we talked about earlier? Well, by combining the massive scale of these corridors with smart, targeted policies, magic happens. Notice how vessel capital subsidies can reduce costs by 15%, and port charge rebates can shave off an incredible 50% of port costs. Add in fuel cost viability gap mechanisms, which is essentially targeted government funding designed to bridge the gap between expensive green fuel and cheap, dirty fuel, and you reduce fuel expenses by another 25%. Furthermore, the International Maritime Organization's net zero framework financially rewards zero-emission fuels while penalizing the high-emission ones. Together, these strategies drastically slash that intimidating premium down to a highly manageable gap of under 20%. This puts global price parity right within our reach. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Will green ammonia remain an expensive niche market? Or will these strategic global partnerships be the exact blueprint that finally decarbonizes our oceans? We've got the ports, we have the incredibly cheap renewable energy, and we certainly have the massive international demand. The blueprint is fully drawn. The only question now is execution. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep your eyes on the horizon, because the zero-emission future of shipping is arriving a lot faster than you think.